much, Dr. Sinai. You made a very excellent presentation on why the topics, including the United States economy and global economy and financial market, in the U.S. election and then nuclear crisis. We don't have much time, so I just summarize a couple of sentences in Dr. Sinai's speech. First, the U.S. economy, the prospect of U.S. economy this year and next year is likely to a major slowdown, most probably a recession or recession not. And also, accelerating inflation from effects of sharp higher energy, food, and healthcare costs are also in trend. So, for a kind of stagflation, will just complicate and then worsen the U.S. economy. On the other hand, the global economy is concerned. Global economy most certainly weaken on U.S. economic trouble, but the global economy will not weaken as much as used to be the case when the U.S. was a more important trading partner for much of the world than it was now. So-called decoupling effect might be applied to the Asian economies. And finally, he mentioned about the Fed policies. The result is likely to provide as much help to the economy in the form of lower interest rate as otherwise might occur, given its responsibilities to achieve, maintain the price stabilities as well as to maximize the sustainable economic growth. Okay, so let me invite all of you to open this session. So if you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand and just identify yourself. Okay. Okay, would you please stand up?
Thanks, Dr. Sinai. This is Francis O from Korea Center for International Finance. And I have a special question about the length of the tunnel in front of us. It was kind of 10 years in 1970s recession. So do you expect such kind of a long tunnel is standing in front of us, or it was rather shorter? I like hear your opinion. Thank you.
Would you take one or two more questions?
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Sinai, Dr. Sinai. You slightly mentioned that better off 2009. I went to Stanford in Connecticut last autumn, and also one of the hedge fund managers came to Korea. He's saying that mortgage market will not recover within 24 months. And subprime problem, despite of the Fed effort, it will last about 6 months to 8 months. What is your opinion about the recession-like situation? Will hit the trough and getting up? How long that will take?
Thank you. One more.
Dr. Alan Sinai, did I pronounce your name correctly? Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
My name is Lee Sang-Seol. Thank you for your timely and excellent presentation on global economy. allow me to ask my question on international trade, since the breakfast is sponsored by the Korean International Trade Association and IGE. How do you foresee or forecast the prospect of U.S.-Korea FTA in the United States? When do you think it would be, or it will be ratified? President-elect envoy, Mr. Chung Mong-jun, who comes to this meeting quite often, is slated to visit the United States soon. Whom do you suggest he should meet and talk to expedite ratification of Korea-US FTA by U.S. Congress while he is in the United States?
Okay, one.
Good morning. I'm from the Australian Embassy. I just have a question with respect to the policy response. During the build-up to this housing bubble, the argument was that it was very difficult to implement a policy that is targeted to prevent such a bubble, because when you have an inflation targeting, then obviously you target the entire economy. Now that the bubble is busting, do we follow the same argument? Which means that we could not have introduced a policy that would target to, for the busting to soften that bubble. So there seems to be an ambivalence in terms of the monetary policy response. Do we now change our tack and say, well, now we have to implement one that would soften this bubble and then get out from the main argument that, we have to have a policy that targets the entire economy. Because as you have mentioned yourself, there seems to be some buffer that is preventing, in fact, going towards the recession path with healthcare and other services, a sector that will continue to provide such a buffer. So I just want to get your idea with respect to the policy responses required.
Thank you. We'll start the first round of questions and then I'll ask the second.
The length of the recession tunnel, so to speak, I think is going to be fairly long. So it's a minimum of 1 year, it could be as long as 3 years. The last recovery from what was in GDP terms a very mild recession in GDP terms in 2000, 2001, 2002. The U.S. economy really didn't get going until 2003. So it basically was a 3-year affair. And this one is minimum 1, maybe 3 years, in part because I think we've got another asset price bubble at first. And what happens is it takes a long time for the investor public and the business enthusiasm to gather around that asset. And even now, the U.S. stock market, if you look at the total returns of the U.S. stock market the last 5 years, they're still anemic compared to historical trend. They're very, very anemic. And we're still lingering on that. The second question was how long the mortgage market would be depressed in the subprime problem. Even when the subprime problem, when all those bad loans are written down, we basically think the credit side will be tight and the overhang of supply of housing will not be worked off because the price dynamic is taken over. The price dynamic is you don't want to buy unless you have to because you can get a better price. And of course, now what's going to happen is we'll have a worse economy, rising unemployment rate, so affordability from that direction will be tougher. So the condition that didn't exist when this all started will be occurring over the next year or so, and that will continue to depress the mortgage market and keep the fallout going in financial institutions of that effect. So I don't disagree with the hedge fund perception, and I think if anything, I think maybe that's a little short. It's a little too short. Now, in principle, interest rates, if they're taken down low enough, can revive certain parts of the housing sector. Remember, this is an interest rate sensitive sector. And there are a lot of good credits in the United States, a lot of good balance sheets. To arrest the decline in home prices, it would probably take an hour worth of study. It's probably the federal funds rate of 2%. Because we're talking about a discounted cash flow model of pricing. If it's a rational pricing mechanism to go down in housing, which it may not be, because in the bursting of bubbles, you get psychological effects that go on. And then the price dynamic so infects the buyers and the sellers in the opposite direction of the bubble when it went up, that you just can't get any demand going, no matter what. That we saw in Japan for quite some time in the 1990s. On international trade, my advice is, I'm kidding a little bit on this one, is I wouldn't bother taking the trip now. I'd wait till after the election. Because I think nothing will happen this year on this issue. It may be that in Washington they will get together on some fiscal stimulus. But the nitty-gritty in a political election year of getting anything done is very difficult, and Congress will be meeting early because of the elections. Problem is, you've got a Senate that a lot of members think one way from the House. You have a president that will veto lots of stuff. So I don't recall the president's stance on this, but if Bush were for this, he wouldn't be asking the question. Probably, it would be something that he would try to push through. Don't think it's high on the priority list. If I were going to take a trip, I'd go see the advisors to Obama or Clinton. One of those two people will probably be the next president. Mr. McCain is an outside shot, and their trouble with the Democrats, there's a little bit of a protectionist theme running through, and the notion of Mrs. Clinton to reevaluate all our trade arrangements kind of means any new signings and ratifications wouldn't happen until after everything was looked at, and then you're talking about 2010, right? So I can't say much encouraging on that. And the other question, which is a very interesting question, has to do with how you handle bubbles in any economy. Chairman Greenspan was concluded with the stock market, so particularly that the job of the Federal Reserve is not to target, include asset prices, and what the Federal Reserve does is to, if there is a bubble, to let it happen and then mop up after. How many of you saw the American movie Pulp Fiction? Did you see that? Do you remember the guy, the fixer, who came afterwards to mop everything up? That's kind of what that view is, I think. Mopping up after it all collapses. And of course, what that gave us was 1% interest rates, a monetary policy that targeted inflation ex food and energy. And of course, that's the lowest rate of inflation that any measure will give you. So we had an incredibly accommodative monetary policy for a long time. And then when we left the 1%, we worked our way up, predictably so, a quarter point at a time. So that left monetary policy extremely accommodative. And so people, John Taylor of Stanford has run a little simulation of what if the Fed had followed the Taylor rule, which meant they would have raised rates sooner. We've run that with our big model. And the answer is you would have still had a nice housing recovery, but not the boom. And with the boom, of course, comes higher prices. And with the boom and higher prices comes mortgage brokers. In this past episode, and we had a very lax supervisory system. And then you have the normal abuses. When I say normal, that you always have in these booms and these bubbles. So I don't have the same view. And there's a growing body of opinion in central banking that says, find a way to intervene earlier in the situation where you might have a bubble and take your chances. Better to do that than to wait till afterwards. And here we have another example, the real estate example of having waited till after, not being alert and preemptive. And look what's happening, and look at the fallout of that. It's really quite a disaster. So there are ways to intervene before without targeting asset prices. I think no economist thinks that you should intervene in the operation of freely moving prices that are in liquid markets, whether it's exchange markets or any other asset price markets. However, we all know when we're in one of these things. Qualitatively, we know. People on the Federal Reserve are seasoned people on any monetary policy board. And technically, it's another technical definition that haunts me as an economist. I'm stuck with all our technical definitions. Well, they don't make any sense to me. You know, I've gotten old enough now where I don't care anymore about these technical definitions that my profession has and that I've signed on to. If it looks like one, feels like one, acts like one, talks like one, and all the anecdotal stories are like it is one, and you might as well start to raise interest rates early so you can diffuse it. I'd rather take my chances that way. More and more central bankers, Stanley Fisher, the Bank of Israel is thinking that way. A couple of Jacob Frankel, people have been in central banking, I think, that way. We discussed this at Jackson Hole. Rick Mishkin, we talked about this last Jackson Hole symposium, did not think so. Bernanke doesn't think so. But I think the motion of opinion is moving your way, which is basically the implication of your question. Since we know these things happen, and we see all the abuses, they happen again and again. It's not just the United States, it's happened in Korea, it's happened in Japan. Everywhere where you have a mixed private enterprise system, it happens. It's part of the system. Since we know it's going to happen, and we know there are going to be all kinds of abuses and selling of snake oil medicine to poor, unsuspecting people, why don't we supervise it better without regulating it, watch it, try to make it more transparent, and intervene sooner? That would be my suggestion for the next round, rather than waiting till Harvey Keitel, I think it was in Pulp Fiction, was that the actor who came in afterwards to mop up the mess that was made by the other people. There's got to be a better way to do it.
Any other questions? Okay.
My name is Jim from Korea Technology Investment Corporation. This morning, Dr. Sinai focused on U.S. housing boom and bust, home growth. We, the other side of Pacific Ocean, have seen problem, and many people worried about the equity boom or bubble in China and the housing market in Korea. How do you assess the risk of the both markets in accordance with your analytic tool, the boom busting analytic tool?
The possibility of boom bust, I think, is greater in China than South Korea in any of the areas of assets. One, because there's been incredible boom, outside boom, and it's kind of percolating there, and the demands of the populace are extraordinary with so many things. The Chinese stock market is one. We have not called bubble. We've rejected that to China, and I think the risk is increasingly there. South Korea's overall growth has been pretty close to potential growth. And though the housing market has seen some apparent excesses, and the central bank here for a while was quite concerned about it, so we are less. We don't think it's really outsized. Part of the view has to do with the overall economy and how heated it is. In our sense, in South Korea's economy, so it's not overheated, growing at 4.5% to 5%, somewhere close to potential. And if policies can be put in place that could raise the potential, good luck. 5% potential growth is pretty good, but some of the history in Korea says it's not so good. Then you could have faster growth and rising asset prices that would go with it. But the economy that grows 10, 11, 12%, where they, through various methods, China is trying to contain it, can't contain it. That's one that really looks somewhat dangerous from the formation level point of view. The P/E ratios, of course, in the Chinese stock market are daunting. Nevertheless, we've been overweight on China, tactically and strategically, for quite some time. We have since taken our strong overweight in the Chinese market down to just an overweight. A little bit cautious.
Any further questions? So this is the privilege of the moderator. I'd like to ask questions.
Always the toughest one. The last one's always the toughest one.
You already mentioned that the U.S. election might affect the economic policies like that. So, how big a difference would be that you elected President the Republican Democrat?
Yes, the question is how big a difference in policies would it be Republican or Democrat? I can tell you some things they're saying now. You never quite know whether that's going to be what happens, and you get a mix of advisors and people who change their mind and say things in the election. But all the Democratic candidates have all said they would not extend the Bush tax cuts, particularly the ones for the 35% and up brackets and the dividend, lower tax rate on dividends, and the 50% tax rate on capital gains. That's not market friendly. The economic implications are different. I think the easiest thing to do is to raise the taxes on 35% higher brackets. Our work suggests that the lower tax rates on dividends and capital gains have been very helpful in terms of energizing the supply side through finance in the economy. I think in Korea you have no capital gains tax rates, and so higher capital gains tax rates would be competitively disadvantaged to the United States. But that's what all Democrats say. They also say that they would cut taxes for the lower income families and the middle class. And there's a fair amount of spending policies that require a good deal of money and no real financing plan that would contain the budget deficit. On the Republican side, all the candidates are for extending all the tax cuts, abolishing to one degree or another the death penalty. Some, Mr. McCain, Senator McCain is very much for squeezing down government spending. There is no candidate that I think has come to grips with the biggest budget problem in the United States. It's the aging population. Same one Japan has, and other countries have. It's the draw on Social Security and pensioners, funding of that comes out of the government, how you do that, how you handle it, and what devices are used. And even more than that, it's health care. It's Medicare, Medicaid, so-called entitlements, which are eating up our budget expenditures and outlays massively, and require really a full-blown attack. And none of the candidates on either side of the electorate take it on. They simply want to insure, to one way or another, all the uninsured Americans, which will cost money. But they're shying away from what do we do about the aging population, how do we handle that. There are differences on energy, and there are differences on the global warming of the candidates. But the first ones I mentioned are really bread and butter. And what I draw from all of that as a business person and financial market person, someone who advises and provides information to lots of firms that move money all around the world, is if we don't come to grips with the fundamental long-run budget deficit problem, I don't want to allocate as much money as I used to for dollars, because that's very, very fundamental. Healthcare inflation rises faster than other inflation in the United States. And you don't see it right away. But if you look at what's going on, the dollar's down, the stock market's down, real estate prices are down, consumer spending growth is down, probably will start to save more. Our trade deficit's improving. It's a major trend. Exports are up, trade deficit's improving. Other currencies are going up. That's going to hurt those economies. Guess what's happening? Over years, the external deficits on the trade current account and the budget deficits, structural budget deficits, are actually affecting U.S. markets and in turn affecting the private sector of the economy, doing just what theory says should happen. It just takes a long time. So if we don't deal with the problems, and I don't think we're doing it, just another pessimistic drop in the bucket, in a bucket right now. This observer, I'm a global person. I live in the United States, but I'm a global business person and market person, and I can't overweight the United States. I have to underweight it in terms of its stock market and in terms of the currency.
Any further questions? You conclude. But I think you diagnose the U.S. economy using the so-called recession. That reminds me of some joke I read a couple of weeks ago. The difference between the slowdown, recession, crisis. If your neighbor loses the job, that's slow down. If you lose your job, that's recession. And then finally, the journalists lose their jobs. That's the crisis. Okay, I want to conclude this session. This has been a very valuable time hearing Dr. Sinai give his views on the U.S. economy and the global economy and the impact on Asia and the global situation. I would like again Dr. Sinai for his very informative and very succinct presentation on this issue. And I would like to thank all the audience for your patience and close attention to this issue. I wish you a happy and very prosperous year. Thank you very much.